Get ready for a wild ride through history's most shameless gun copies. From China's cheeky Type 56, a doppelganger of the AK-47, to Israel's Galil, a not-so-subtle nod to Finland's RK-62. These imitations often outshine their originals, proving that copying is indeed an art form. There is a tradition to refer to the AK-47 as legendary when mentioning it. What else can be said about a rifle that is depicted on the flag of Mozambique and has been sold worldwide in quantities exceeding 100 million units? For instance, it can be noted that there is an almost exact copy of this rifle under a different name. The first to replicate this rifle were the Chinese. After the breakdown in relations with the USSR, China needed a new rifle and decided to try copying the already existing Soviet design. And guess what? They succeeded. The resulting copy, the Type 56, has the same 7.62mm caliber as the original and can fire both single shots and bursts. Externally, it is almost an exact copy. However, as they say, the devil is in the details. Here, we encounter some differences between the AK-47 and the Type 56. For example, the Type 56 has a different shape for the grip and stock, as well as a different magazine design. Additionally, the Type 56 has a rougher finish than the AK-47 and is less accurate compared to the original. Interestingly, the lack of significant design changes sometimes played against the Chinese army. For example, during the conflict on Damansky Island, Soviet border guards could easily use Chinese ammunition which perfectly fit the AK-47 in both caliber and form factor. Kalashnikov analogues were also produced in Poland, Romania, Germany, Hungary, North Korea, and Pakistan. In many developing countries, the AK-47 became the favorite weapon of rebels and a symbol of the fight for freedom. You are certainly familiar with the next weapon, as it has appeared in many video games. At one point, the Israeli army needed a new rifle that was more advanced and effective than the older models. Developers went to work, and soon the IMI Galil emerged, beautiful, powerful, and reliable, quickly becoming a favorite among soldiers. However, it soon became clear that IMI Galil was not a unique weapon, but a copy of the Finnish RK-62. So, you understand that the copy became much more famous than the original. Some people might wonder, why did the Israelis copy the Finnish rifle? The answer is quite simple. The Finnish rifle was one of the best at the time. The Israelis decided to copy it to create their own variant. Both the RK-62 and the Galil have sturdy construction and high accuracy. Both rifles fire 7.62 caliber rounds, although the Galil has a version for 5.56, which likely contributed to its greater fame. So even though the IMI Galil is a copy of the Finnish RK-62, it remains one of the best rifles in the world. It would be amusing if someone later copied the Galil again. Perhaps in the future, a copy of a copy of a copy of this rifle will become even better and more effective than the original. World War II also had similar stories. The Sten submachine gun was very popular during World War II. British engineers created it to provide the army with inexpensive and easy-to-use weapons. The idea was simple: to make an automatic pistol that could be quickly and cheaply produced. They accomplished this task brilliantly. Toward the end of the war, in 1944, Germany faced production costs for weapons and created their version of the Sten, called the MP3008, where MP stands for Maschinenpistole. Of course, the copy was not an exact replica, but the main features were preserved. The MP3008 had the same shape and size as the Sten. However, the most noticeable difference was that while the Sten had a side-mounted magazine, the MP3008 had a bottom-mounted one, as is typical for most conventional weapons. It also used 32-round magazines and fired 9mm rounds. The MP3008 was also heavier than the Sten and had more labor-intensive assembly process. The Nazis managed to produce between 10,000 to 50,000 of these copies before the war ended. Despite this, it became quite popular in Europe after the war. We are not done with the Chinese yet. It all began in 1980 when Chinese arms manufacturers decided they needed their own version of the AR-15 or M16. Instead of simply purchasing a production license from American companies, they decided to take matters into their own hands and create their own copy. Chinese engineers gathered to study the details of the AR-15. They examined all the blueprints, technical specifications, and principles of the original weapon's operation. Ultimately, the Chinese engineers gathered all the necessary knowledge and began producing their own version, the Norinco CQ-311. They used the same parts and operating principles, but modified the design slightly to meet Chinese standards and requirements. Although the Norinco CQ-311 is a copy of the AR-15, there are some differences between them. The Chinese made some changes to the design and materials to make the weapon more affordable and cheaper to produce. For example, they used cheaper materials for some parts and simplified the assembly process. The CQ-311 had a 20-round magazine, whereas AR-15s typically came with 30-round magazines. Additionally, the Chinese copy used the same 5.56mm caliber rounds and had a similar bolt and trigger mechanism. Although this copy did not become widely known, it is impressive how many different attempts at copying weapons the Chinese made over time. The F1 grenade, an iconic symbol of explosive power, has a fascinating history of imitation and innovation. Originally crafted by the French during World War I, this lethal device quickly became a favorite on battlefields across the globe. Its distinctive lemon-like shape earned it the nickname Limonka in Soviet Russia, where it was exclusively copied and adapted. The Soviet F1 grenade retained the original deadly efficiency but introduced its own unique fuse mechanism, the UZR-GM, with a precise 3.5 to 4 second delay, ensuring reliable performance in combat. Meanwhile, down under, the Australian military took the F1 design and added their own twist. Developed in the mid-1990s, the Australian F1 grenade incorporated over 4,000 steel balls, creating a lethal radius of 6 meters and a casualty radius of 15 meters. This variant even spawned an offensive version, the F2, designed for close-quarters combat without relying on fragmentation, showing a perfect blend of safety and destruction. China, never one to shy away from replication, developed the Type 1 grenade, a near-exact copy of the Soviet F1. However, in true Chinese fashion, they used different materials and production techniques to cut costs, reflecting on a broader trend of pragmatic innovation. These global variations of the F1 grenade, while sharing the original's core design, each introduced unique adaptations to suit local military needs and technological advancements. The story of the F1 grenade and its shameless copies is a testament to the blend of imitation and ingenuity in military history, proving that sometimes the best ideas are worth replicating, often with explosive results. Lastly on our list is the Yugoslav Zastava M53 machine gun. It all started with the MG42, a German machine gun from World War II. It was an engineering marvel. The MG42 was the fastest machine gun of its time, capable of firing up to 1,200 rounds per minute. After World War II, Yugoslavia embarked on a path of socialism and sought to develop its own military industry. During this period, Zastava Arms, one of Yugoslavia's largest arms manufacturers, decided to create its own version of the MG42. They used the German machine gun as a base but made some modifications. One of the main differences between the Zastava M53 and the MG42 is the use of a different caliber. The MG42 fired 7.92mm Mauser rounds, while the Zastava M53 was adapted for the 7.62mm NATO rounds. Additionally, the Zastava M53 received some improvements in design to meet the needs of the Yugoslav army. The cooling system was improved to allow longer firing without barrel overheating, and the bolt system was enhanced to increase reliability and accuracy. It had the same rate of fire and power as its German predecessor. Unlike Chinese copies, which were cheaper and had some issues with part processing, Yugoslavia took a higher quality approach. Therefore, many still consider the Zastava M53 one of the best weapon copies in history. What interesting copies of famous weapons do you know? Share in the comments.